Hi, JJWalsh here, longtime resident of Hiroshima, originally from America, from Hawaii. But I've learned over many years to really love and respect living here in Hiroshima. What an amazing contrast growing up near Pearl Harbor and living most of my life here in Hiroshima. It's August 3rd today. I'm doing a walkthrough of the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park, really the heart of modern Hiroshima City, which has rebranded itself as the City of Peace. Just in case the live stream quality is not great on August 6th when I'm trying to restream and share some of the images, sights and sounds of this amazing commemorations of the 80th year since the bombing of Hiroshima. I'm also doing this recording all in one piece as we walk through. Hopefully you'll still get the sense of walking through live with me as if we're doing a guided tour together. Right behind me, I'm standing at the marker. Right above here, 600 meters above, was where the bomb exploded. So I'll turn the camera around and show you what we can see around this area. So at the end of this street, where is now the event space called Gate Park, that was where the shrine was during the wartime, and completely destroyed. And the Torii Gate was still standing at the end of that street. So you can see the Torii Gate that survived right here under where the bomb exploded at the end of this street. This is a hospital, and it was a hospital at the time. Dr. Shima Hospital, his grandson now runs it. He survived the bombing. He was visiting the rural areas on the day of the bomb, and he had so much survivor guilt, like many survivors did, for losing all of his staff, all of his doctors and nurses. You can see more information about the nurses and doctors at Shima Hospital in the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. Underneath here it talks about how the heat of the blast was 3,000 to 4,000 degrees of heat in this immediate area. And that's hotter than the heat of lava. So that's just an incredible amount of intense heat and strong winds in this immediate blast area. Now, what you can see when you're walking around Hiroshima City, you can see the entire city center is surrounded by mountains. And you can see the mountain range straight ahead beyond the event space there. And that's something you notice as you walk around all of Hiroshima City Center, this ring of mountains. And on many accounts, that's why Hiroshima was chosen, because the mountains would contain the blast for data purposes, but also for maybe compassionate purposes to contain the blast and limit the victims. I love looking at the reflection here of this temple, as we can see the A-bomb dome in the reflection of the building. It doesn't seem like it should be reflected. This is one of the closest cemeteries, temple and cemeteries, to where the bomb exploded. And unfortunately, a lot of the ashes were lost. And in Japanese culture, they want to keep the ashes of all the ancestors together over the generations. So that was a horrible loss. Plus, a lot of the graves listed as 1945 August 6th are empty. They never found the bodies. This is a very special jizo. They call it jizo-san, the honorific jizo. And this jizo is the closest to where the bomb exploded. And you can see the shadows on the face and also the shadows under the jizo, which is actually the original stone And what was exposed to the bombing was bleached white, and you can actually feel how bumpy the stone became because of the intensity of the heat. You can see the picture of what this area looked like and some of the original tile here. You can hear the summer sound of the cicadas, the semi, as we walk over to the A-bomb dome here. The most important, most iconic view of this now called A-bomb dome. It was designated World Heritage UNESCO in 1996, and that's the year that we came to Hiroshima. What a significant year to also be the year 2 sites in Hiroshima were designated UNESCO World Heritage. So before the UNESCO designation, there was no gate around it. Once it was designated, the gate and alarm system was put in place, and support beams were also put inside to preserve it in hopes that it will last for many more generations into the future. It's such an important building for people to see for themselves and experience by looking the power of the bomb, and think if a strong building was impacted like this, what happens to people. There's always volunteers here who are telling testimony as survivors, but also passing on stories of others in the next generation. This is the 80th year, so it's getting more and more difficult for survivors to give testimony and to volunteer themselves, especially in this heat. I worry about them. Looking at the bridge here, this is the T Bridge, which was the sighting point the bombers were aiming at in 1945, August 6th. And the bomb was dropped aiming at this point, these 2 cross bridges. From the sky, it looks like a T, and the split rivers below. But exploded at the marker we saw 2 blocks away. At the opposite side of the river here, you can see the clock tower, and that chimes every morning at 8:15. And it's especially important on August 6th when there's a lot of noise happening and the clock chimes and people are quiet. There's a minute of silence. This is one of the most dedicated survivors giving testimony. And he's here in the Peace Park in this area almost every day, talking with visitors in both English and Japanese. So much respect for all the volunteers and local people who so tirelessly every day spend so much effort and share their passion for sharing their stories in hopes that it never happens again and we can learn from the mistakes of the past. I love all the trees as we walk around, all the beautiful trees of Peace Park, but it's amazing to think that none of the trees in this immediate area grew back within a year. There are 150 designated A-bomb survivor trees, but none of them are in this immediate area. The closest one is just on the other side of the river. But the fact that all of these trees were donated by people around Japan and planted here to bring hope and bring that connection to nature so you can find hope back is such a beautiful part of the story of rebuilding this area as well. When we come here on August 6th, we'll look down at this river and see thousands of floating lanterns. And on the colorful washi Japanese paper, people will have written their stories of hope for peace, sadness for loss, personal loss, or the loss of so many people who died here. They say more than 70,000 people were killed instantly. Look at this bird flying toward us. Amazing. I love that. And by the end of 1945, 140,000 people had died because of the bombing. And every year they add more names. The books of names are written on the cenotaph, underneath the cenotaph. So we'll see that in a minute or two when we're walking through the peace part. This building on the left is also an A-bomb survivor building. And one person actually survived in this building. He was having a meeting with everyone on the top floor and he forgot some paperwork. And the secretary looked busy, as the story goes. And so he himself went down to the basement and was looking for paperwork. And because he was under so much concrete, he survived and no one else did. So he lived with a lot of survivor guilt, like so many survivors. But he dedicated his life to telling his testimony, and he lived till almost 90. He was in his mid-40s at the time. Here's what the building looked like before the bombing and after. Before the war, it was a kimono shop. If you go to the top floor, you can see what the area looked like before the bombing. And you can very clearly see the T-bridge in that diagram at the top. The T-bridge and the split rivers, and that's what the pilots were aiming at. And it exploded 2 blocks over 600 meters in the sky. Now you can go down and see where the survivor survived under all the concrete and read his story. You can see the A-bomb survivor piano on the 2nd floor in the cafe, and you can go to the top and see images of what the area looked like before the bombing. It was a thriving neighborhood. It was restaurants, houses, schools, temples. It was a thriving city center. A lot of survivors describe coming to this area with excitement as a really fun, beautiful, vibrant place to come. But as it was completely destroyed and it is one island, it made sense to repurpose this island as the main Peace Memorial Park area. What we're looking at now is referred to as the Peace Line. So over these beautiful roses that I can smell right now, they're still in bloom. We can see the A-bomb dome structure. And then the Children's Monument next to us. And then turning the other way, we can see the Peace Flame, the Cenotaph, and the museum, all in the same line. This is the Children's Monument in honor of all the children who died in connection with the bombing. But they say at the top, and it was inspired by a young girl named Sadako Sasaki, and she was 2 years old at the time of the blast. She seemed okay, She was very active at school, very sporty. But 10 years later, like so many children, she developed leukemia and went to hospital. And everyone was folding cranes for her to get better. In Japanese culture, if you fold 1,000 cranes, you get a special wish. She was also folding cranes, but giving them away. You can come and ring the bell, and the bell itself looks like a crane as well. And it's very loud. The gong is supposed to sound like a school bell. And here are some of the beautiful cranes. Many people bring them in these strands of 1,000 with messages of peace, the name of the school when they came. And hundreds of thousands of cranes are brought every year and dedicated to peace in the park. And the ones they can't keep here anymore, they either reuse the paper into journals and stationery and postcards or greeting cards, or they take them to the sacred island of Miyajima, where they are burned in a sacred fire. But local potters reuse the ash and use it in their glaze. The official potter for Itsukushima Jinja, Itsukushima Shrine, reuses the ash from daishoing after the sacred fire and uses it in a beautiful candle holder that diffuses the light so beautifully. And that candle holder was given to all the leaders of the world who came for the G7 2 years ago, and President Zelensky was also given one. This area they leave open to allow the groups that come a place to hang it, like this group is doing. So they work together as an organization or school to fold all these beautiful cranes. And then when they come, they usually have a song or a poem and hang their cranes. They work so hard to create, to represent their group. And they have messages of hope and peace on them. This is from a high school, Hiroshima City High School, junior high school and high school. Along the side here, they have extra exhibits showing newspapers and information. They always do this before the commemorations every August 6th to have extra exhibits and extra information. This is such a good idea because a lot of people want to have the information about what happened here, but often inside the museum is too crowded. It's become so popular. It's something everyone wants to do. So spreading out the exhibits and spreading out the crowds is such a wonderful strategy to overcome that over-tourism crowded feeling and let people take the information in for themselves. It has more impact and more lasting impression. Here we're walking up to the peace flame. It's not called an internal flame because the designers of the Peace Park say they want to turn it off when there's no more war and there's no more nuclear weapons. So I was here in May when Patti Smith and one of our local A-bomb survivors, Keiko Ogura, who's 88. She was 8 years old when she survived the blast. And she actually lives in the neighborhood I live now. So her story always deeply impacts me. But they were together, stood at the cenotaph, and Patti Smith was laying a wreath of flowers. And Keiko Ogura told her the story of the peace flame and how the designers of the Peace Park, they want to turn this flame off when there's no more war, there's no more nuclear weapons. And Patti Smith turned to Keiko Ogura and said, Keiko, I hope that happens really soon. And it just really impressed me. My heart lifted. And I thought, right on, Patti. I love that optimism, because too many of us are worried that we can never turn off the flame. I love seeing this reflection, the cenotaph reflected in the pool below. Such a beautiful arch, but with the reflection it becomes a circle. Now this arch the design dates back 3,000 years to an ancient burial design, and it is the design of Isamu Noguchi. Now Isamu Noguchi is famous Japanese American architect and designer, and his design for the entire Peace Park was not chosen. The entire Peace Park was designed by Kenzo Tange. But Kenzo Tange was respected Isamu Noguchi so much that he chose the center of the park design as Isamu Noguchi's design. And Isamu Noguchi also designed the bridges at the end of Peace Park. This is where locals come and light incense. It's also where people come and give flowers and pray for peace and pay respects for those who died, but also to make a wish and hope for peace. Inside the cenotaph there is a stone, and under the stone is where they have hundreds of books with the names of everyone who died in connection with the bomb on August 6, 1945. So every year more names are added. Even if they die 80 years later, if they were registered as being here on August 6, 1945, their names are added. There are not only Japanese names, there's also American names, there's also Korean names. And every year they take out the books and they write more names if people have died within the last year. They added more than 5,000 names last year, and there were more than 340,000 names in total. So this year, it'll be interesting and important to think about the number of names that are written and how many are added in this 80th year. You can see all of the tents being set up to make shade for people who will be sat watching the event here on August 6th. And this area in front of the cenotaph is where they will make the event stage, and they have politicians making speeches, survivors still giving testimony, and young elementary school kids who are chosen to talk about their vision of future peace. And it's when the children talk with such innocence and conviction that it usually impacts people quite strongly. And one of the elementary school kids is 12 this year, and he's been volunteering as a guide in the park since he was 7. I read about him in the Japan Times today, And earlier, when I was practicing for the live stream today, I had the chance to meet him. And he speaks English well, and he volunteers to tell visitors to the park a bit about his grandmother's story. And it's especially powerful this year because he is 12 and his grandmother was 12 when she survived the nuclear attack on Hiroshima City in 1945. So it's so important to have this lasting legacy of younger generation who is continuing to tell these stories, which are such an important part of keeping the hope alive that we will never have a nuclear attack on people again. This whole area on August 6th will have lots of mist machines around it. People under the shade of the museum will be passing out cold towels and cold water. You can refill your bottles here. And this was the first building that Kenzo Tange built when they were rebuilding the city. And most of the rebuilding of the city and the park was funded by local people. Hiroshima people apparently paid for 80% of all the rebuilding. And so this fountain here is in tribute and honor for Hiroshima Bank, because keeping the banks here was such an important part of the rebuilding of the city. Such a beautiful fountain. And there's the gates of peace on the other side. You can walk through, and it has the words written, peace, in all the languages of the world, even Braille. So I'll sign off now, but thank you for joining. It was wonderful to do this little loop on August 3rd, because on August 6th, because of security, there'll be a lot of areas that are blocked off and difficult to walk through. So it's a lot easier today on August 3rd to be able to walk through the route. But I'll try to capture some video and live stream on the 6th, just so that you can have a bit of the atmosphere of the sights and sound on the day. This is such an important event in Hiroshima for the 80th commemorations of the bombing in 2025, August 6th, 80 years after the bombing of August 6, 1945. And 3 days after, I'll again be in Nagasaki to help document and share images, sights and sounds from Nagasaki on August 9th. And it's actually the first time I'll be going to Nagasaki on their Peace Day. So it's a very impactful for me, as well as a longtime Hiroshima resident. I will turn the camera around and finish as we walk toward the A-bomb dome. Thank you so much for joining. See you again next time. Take care. Peace out, folks. So it's August 6th, 7:45 in the morning. And there's a lot of protests happening around the A-bomb dome that we see on the left here. We're in Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park. Anything you noticed as we were going through the protests?
A lot of pressure and tension in the air, I think. Yeah, very interesting to see like such a high pressure August 6th.
Yeah, a lot of security.
Definitely. Security, police, a lot. So, yeah, I heard earlier they were saying that the get out police, this is not your place and stuff. So, yeah.
And you were born and raised here.
Yeah.
How does it feel to be here for the 80th commemorations?
Feels good to be here. Yeah, but it feels different somehow. Feels like more attention, more focus is put on Hiroshima right now. So I hope, yeah, a lot of people are able to think about peace and stop and acknowledge what we have today.
That's my son, born and raised in Hiroshima. It's wonderful to be here with him. So what are the banners that we're seeing out along the river?
They say, beware of heat stroke.
Beware of heat stroke.
Please rehydrate. Take some water frequently.
And then the whole inboundam area is inside the security area. And we want to be here on the bridge. This is the sighting point called the T Bridge. We want to be here for 8:15. This is an interesting place to be. You can see the classic streetcars going up and down the T Bridge. You can see our new football stadium down there. That's another way to negotiate peace, isn't it, with sports?
Peace wing.
The peace wing. So there's a lot of noise down here, but everything's well organized. And of course, people should be enthusiastic about anti-nuclear, and Hiroshima people and people around Japan definitely are. We're at a turning point in Japan right now. Yeah. It looks like this is where the line. I asked years ago at one of their breaks what they were chanting for, and they said, we're trying to bring the positive energy from the center of the earth to help humanity make peace. Right on. We need more of that. And the big open space here used to be the baseball stadium when I first came in '96. And now they repurpose it, have different events, different times of the year. Let's continue on to the end of the peace line. They're playing the music for Radio Taiso. We might see some people out here doing morning exercise. Kabuto. I saw Oasis there many years ago. But this is the peace line that we're standing on. And you can see some of the stones that survived, or that are A-bomb stones that they reused as part of the design. So the protest that we passed is a Free Gaza Palestine Support protest. And I was reading in the newspaper today how Israel and Russia were both invited this year to Hiroshima and Nagasaki commemorations. Nagasaki did not invite Israel last year or Russia, but it's nice to hear of everyone being invited as a chance to discuss and negotiate peace. If you're not at the table, you have no chance to negotiate peace. So there's a good argument for diplomacy in inclusion. Our famous trams right here next to the Peace Park, bringing a lot of visitors today. Activists are talking about the transition Japan is in now from a country focused on peace and anti-nuclear to thinking more about accepting nuclear. So there's a really important year to consider the changes. Definitely a lot of police. There's always a lot of riot police, but this year especially, we've got a really big presence. Usually these commemorations get 50,000 people a day for the day and night. I'm sure it's probably a bit more this year. Hey. You're born and raised in Hiroshima.
Yeah.
Any comments? You've been here many times for these events.
I actually haven't been here many times for the event. Yeah. Like, it's less common for, I think, people living here to come, so
But
I'm very happy I'm here today.
But you've worked also with peace tourism, and can you tell us a little bit about it?
I'm lucky to have had the chance to work a lot with peace and with organizations, or with PCV I did some tours to Japanese kids living in Japan, or one time I did to English-speaking people from abroad, so having those chances was really lucky for me. And I think if I were to, since I've heard lots of stories from many hibakusha, like us, the most recent hibakusha I talked to, and her message, Tanaka Toshiko, was more about how, in her perspective and in reality, there are no borders on the world if you look up from the sky. And nuclear weapons, the use of them, doesn't only affect one country, it affects the whole world. So we need to make a world without borders so that we can understand that everything affects everyone. And I thought that was really important. So that would be one of the messages I think I would pass on.
Ah, that's also day, right? The clock tower, right? It chimes every morning at 8:15, the time of the bomb. And that's why we're here on this bridge, because this was the sighting point, right?
Yeah, the bomb dropped around behind the atomic bomb dome right now, on top of a hospital called Shima Hospital. It exploded 600 meters in the air. So from here, you could probably see it drop, right?
Yeah.
If you were here at that time.
And so a lot of people will be gathering here at 8:15 on this bridge and looking up, with the idea that looking up on that day, they would have been able to see it, right? And even on a normal day, when I've been here, when the clock tower chimes, people do stop and have a moment, right? So a lot of people think the bomb exploded right above the A-bomb dome, as it's called now, but it was about 2 blocks behind it. But the A-bomb dome is really impressive because of its structure and the dome shape. A lot of engineers on my tours often say they're not that surprised the dome shape survived, because the dome is the strongest shape in architecture.
Yeah.
But it's incredible, isn't it, that it really did stay intact. When you see the pictures of this area, it's all rubble besides the A-bomb dome. And then the orange building on the other side of the river, down to the right, is also a survivor building.
Behind the trees, yeah. a man named Enzo, at the time when the bomb dropped, was in the basement of the building there, and it used to be a kimono shop, and they made kimono there. And he was in the basement, and when the bomb dropped, like, all the glass shattered around him, and he was like, he got glass in his skin, but he survived, although like all the people around him were dead. And yeah, that's one of the stories.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. How he was having a meeting with everybody at the top floor. He forgot some paperwork.
Oh, that's the story.
And he looked at the secretary. She looked busy, so he went down to the basement. And because he was under so much concrete, he was able to survive, even being here so close to where the bomb exploded. Most people in this immediate area had no chance, right? So it's incredible he survived. But his story, he talks a lot about survivor guilt.
4 minutes.
4 minutes, okay. He talks a lot about survivor guilt, which I see when I go to Pearl Harbor. All the sailors having all the guilt. It's so common, right? But he said once he realized it's his duty to tell the story because he did survive, right?
Yeah, that's what Tanaka Toshiko said too. Shita, which was 2.3 kilometers away, that was the only reason that she survived. And all her kindergarten classmates all died. So she didn't talk about how she survived because she felt that she didn't want to, because it's like, oh hey, I survived and you didn't. So that's why she didn't talk about it for years. But in her 70s, someone told her that as a survivor you have responsibility, or like you need to talk about it so it doesn't happen again. And with that, she started talking about her story, and like it's spreading the word now. So that's very similar.
That's amazing. I have so much gratitude and so much respect for survivors who are able to tell their story, because even now, 80 years later, it must be so painful, right? And of course, we completely understand when survivors can't tell the story, that it's still too painful. And we understand that as well. He is talking about an interesting account from John Hershey, his book, Hiroshima. That was the first book published in America in the 50s, which really had such a profound effect on Americans, and more deeply understanding what had happened here to real people, that it wasn't just a military target, right? So that was a really pivotal book. And I usually at the time of 8:15, the time the bomb dropped, there's complete silence, even by the protesters. But this year they continued. That was very unusual. But being here on the bridge was really powerful at 8:15. And the idea of looking up into the sky and imagining the bomb being dropped.
I think it's very powerful, and I feel like there's a deeper meaning behind this being preserved as well, because there's a lot of other buildings that survived the bomb, but they got rid of. So at least this one's here right now to tell us we really shouldn't repeat and use atomic bombs, and we really should try to phase it out of our world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. It's so wonderful having my kids here today, and them having grown up in Hiroshima. They have such amazing insights, having grown up American and British here in Hiroshima, feeling like they're a local, of course, but not being completely. But they've always been accepted, which I'm very grateful for. That idea of the A-bomb dome being preserved or not was a big debate. Even in 1996 when we came, there was still discussion whether to preserve it or not. But once it was designated UNESCO World Heritage Site, and then the gate around it went up, and the support beams went inside, and a lot of us, well, most of us in the world, I think, had a sigh of relief that it would be preserved for future generations, so people coming would be able to see it for themselves. Such an important monument. I met the director of UNITAR years ago, Azimi Nasreen, and she worked in the UNITAR office. Job, she said, was to bring people to negotiate peace in seminars and workshops, and she would book their hotels on the other side of the Peace Park, so they had to walk through the Peace Park before the meetings. And then she would sit them at the window overlooking this A-bomb dome. And she said, you can never underestimate the power of this place and how important it is to impress upon people the need to. So definitely so many arguments in favor of preserving this building. Apparently there were a lot of wonderful letters from young activists, peace activists in Hiroshima, which also swayed the UNESCO organization to preserve it, but also the national government to preserve it. Let's walk toward the clock tower a little bit. Now on the right side here, you do see the elementary school, Honkawa Elementary School. And it was an elementary school at the time, and only one student survived. All the teachers and students died. The student that survived was under concrete. That is a common story in this immediate blast zone area. If someone was under enough concrete, they did have a chance to survive, which is just incredible. And this is the side where a lot of people will be standing in line to release their lanterns in the evening. Oh, this is another checkpoint. But it looks like I can go and see the cranes here before the checkpoint.
Just spend a moment of silence and solemn solitude with everybody that was here on this day 80 years ago. So thank you for your question and attention to this matter. Nuclear war has never been likelier, so we definitely have to do something to prevent that.
Thank you so much for coming and helping spread
Nice to know your live
the good word. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Ari Beezer has written many wonderful articles for National Geographic about survivor stories. You can search his name. His grandfather, I'm looking up at the clock tower here, his grandfather was on the plane, was on the Enola Gay that dropped the bomb, and he grew up becoming a journalist and really engaged in what was happening, and came over on a Rhodes Scholar and wrote so many beautiful articles and stories. He's very focused on peace in his writing and journalism still. It looks like I'll have to go through the checkpoint before I can get to this area. But the line is not too long, but I might sign off and then I'll do some short videos and things a bit later as I go throughout the day. But I'm so glad you could join us. And the idea is to stand on the stepping stone and look at the front of the bell, which is supposed to look like a mirror. Can you live a life more peaceful? Because if we have war, we are all connected, right? And then the back of the bell where you strike the bell is actually the nuclear symbol. So check out the channel. Thank you so much for joining. Wonderful to have you here today with me live, Wayne and Louise. Hopefully see you again live soon. Thanks everyone. Take care.